G'day. There are some 2,000 people working in the F1 paddock at every race, and they all need to eat and drink. But how does it all work? Let me tell you. This is the F1 paddock, and in 2025 it's home to 10 F1 teams of around 100 people each. Now, those people don't get the chance to leave the paddock for a feed or drink during the day, and there's no food on sale inside the paddock. So the teams set up their own kitchens to cater for their crew, plus they're invited guests. How many catering staff does each team have? Well, that depends on the race. Around 8 or so for a quiet race like Baku or Bahrain, but that number can swell to 14 or 16 for a busy race like Silverstone or Austin. Each of the teams will have 4 or 5 chefs. One might look after the drivers, another for the team principal and senior management, 2 for the crew perhaps, and 1 for the VIP guests. And for 8 of the 10 teams, they employ a catering company to handle that side of the business. I'll run through those shortly. Oh, about half of you aren't subscribed. Once this video's finished, could you please hit that subscribe button? I'd love to have you on board. First up, the food on offer from the teams is high quality. This is the top level of motorsport, and it requires the very best catering, both for the teams and for the VIP guests. There's lots of fresh vegetables, pasta's popular, seafood, meat, just about everything you can think of. But the preparation for a race starts with a visit to the markets on the Monday prior to each race. That's JI Catering. They look after Haas. But what about the other teams? Well, Mercedes uses Doe & Co., one of the biggest catering companies in the world. At Ferrari, it's Ritmo. McLaren uses Restaurant Associates. Rocket Food works with Aston Martin. Alpine uses Wallenborn Events. Williams, Absolute Taste. And Sauber, Gear Up Gastro. And Red Bull does all their catering in-house. I've been speaking to a number of the catering people over the last few weeks, prepping for this video, and I discovered the other day that the caterers have a WhatsApp group that they use to communicate with each other. And the camaraderie amongst this group is quite legendary. They're not in competition with each other. They often help each other out with provisions, like if a team runs out, say, of milk, a quick message on the WhatsApp group and somebody comes to their aid. Need more pasta? Well, that's solved quickly too. And that camaraderie was quite evident last year. Remember, we had a fire in the McLaren hospitality suite at Barcelona that rendered their kitchen out of order. That's when a number of other teams stepped up to help with the catering for the teams and also housing of the VIP guests. It was certainly an unusual situation, but it could have ended up a lot worse had they not have had this great relationship between those catering people. Another example of that camaraderie was when Nico Hülkenberg made it onto the podium at Silverstone. Sauber wasn't expecting that, so they had very little champagne on offer. When the other teams got wind of it, they stepped up and offered them bottles that they had so that the team could celebrate, knowing that at some point the Sauber caterer would then return those bottles. This goes on a lot. Staff-wise, most of the caterers use a core of full-time people who do most or all of the races and then supplement that workforce with casuals or freelancers for the busy races. And is this a 9-to-5 job? No way. This is a grind. The catering staff will often work 80 to 90 hours over a Grand Prix week. Monday to Wednesday, the setup days might be 8 to 6 p.m. But come Thursday to Sunday, when there's action at the track and people need to be fed and hydrated, that can easily bump up to 12 or 18-hour days. One of the team members I spoke to said that they could end up working 110 hours over a 7-day period. And when you look at a triple header, that's a lot of work. Crew arrive on the Monday to set up for the Thursday to Sunday, pack up Sunday night, head to an airport on Monday for the next race, and that happens 3 times in 3 weeks. But for the most cases with these staff on full-time agreements, they don't have to do much more than the 24 races. Some, though, will end up having to go back to the factories, perhaps to organise freight, going by sea or air, and even ordering food and drinks in advance. I was keen to find out how much local food is served in those suites because, of course, F1 visits 21 odd countries throughout the year, and we're in a different country pretty much every week, and that means different cuisine. I was told that for the team, they tend to have the same sort of meals all the time because for the local flavour, the guys and girls go out at night and they get their local offering in the evening. But for VIPs and guests, there's a blend of local and international offerings. And on the subject of VIPs, I was told by one team they cater for about 70 guests a day for meals and another 40 to 50 for drinks at a busy race. And then you add on top of that 80 to 130 team members, and it's not hard to understand just how busy those kitchens can be when they're turning out 500 to 700 meals every single day. Of course, in Europe, the teams have their own motorhomes, and that means that they work with a familiar setup. But for the flyaways, they have to set up their kitchens from scratch. This is what one team's kitchen looked like at the end of a race. This was Baku recently. This is a far cry from what it looked like during the busy 4-day weekend. And a lot of the bigger stuff is actually sourced locally, but the smaller stuff, the kitchen gear, tends to travel with the team freight. And oftentimes there's more than one set of that equipment, and those sets leapfrog each other. Prior to COVID, I, as media, could eat at the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari, and those meals were fantastic. But since then, things have changed. Now you need to be invited to go and eat with a team, and I've certainly eaten with most of them, and I absolutely adore that experience. And if you happen to have been a guest of a team, you too would agree that it's pretty special dining inside that paddock. The food and the drinks are top-notch. Any Michelin star chefs in the paddock? I'm not sure at the moment, but in the past we've had the likes of German Karl-Heinz Hauser and Niall Keating providing catering, and they make it look easy. The kitchens, well, they're a lot smaller than what a chef would ideally like to be working in. Sometimes they're exceptionally hot, and there's very little downtime for the crew. This is a sight we often see. Catering staff wheeling trolleys of food into the paddock where they've been shopping nearby. And at the back of the kitchens, both for the flyaway races and the European races where they have hospitality suites, you'll find big refrigeration units and even barbecues where the team cook up a storm. I mentioned earlier on that a chef will often be assigned to one task, and one of the important tasks is driver's meals. Typically, a trainer will liaise with the chef over the course of a weekend and say, right, these are the meals we need, and here's the times that we need them. And whether or not the driver eats inside the suite, perhaps with his trainer or friends and family, or, as often is the case, in his driver's room in the engineering suite or the garage, where meals are brought over to him, the kitchens are acutely aware of the health standards involved. And in particular, when you've got a team of people all eating the same food, the last thing you want is for something to go through the team and result in not enough staff being able to run a garage. That would be a disaster. I mentioned before that the team is involved in a very busy pack-up on a Sunday night after a race. But bear in mind, you've got staff that have to work all the way through the night, pulling down the motorhome, for instance, in Europe. In those instances, a skeleton staff will stay on in order to feed those people at the track, and it might be a barbecue behind the garage or simple sandwiches. So that's team catering. What about Paddock Club? Well, I've been up to Paddock Club a lot in my time, and I can tell you the food up there is unbelievable. What I love is the fact that they have chefs cooking at these dedicated stations. There's roasted seafood, caviar, cheese, or pretty much everything you can think of, and it's hugely impressive. And quite frankly, it needs to be, because those Paddock Club tickets are big money, and people expect amazing food and drink. And in general, I think they're pretty darn happy with it. I mentioned earlier on that there is no food for sale in the paddock. You can't just walk up and get a sandwich or a hamburger. You can outside, but not in the paddock. But from time to time, at certain races, we get free food. And I can give you an example here of a Barilla pasta in Monza, stunning. Shawarmas in Bahrain, very nice. And on a sweet note, Stroop waffles in Belgium. Have I ever seen drivers eating from those food vans in the paddock? One just outside the paddock in Britain, Yuki Tsunoda, enjoying one of these waffles. And what about media catering? Because sometimes there's 400 media at an event. Well, it ranges from the very best, which would be Mexico, and with something like 15 or 20 staff cooking marvellous meals for us over 4 days, to the very basic, which was Monaco. But this year they raised the bar. Now, with that said, I'm hungry, so I'm going to go and get a feed. Before I go though, could you please hit the like button, and for those unsubscribed, I do welcome your subscription by the press of a button. And for a whole lot of extra content and merchandise, that's where you need to look. Thanks for watching, and stay passionate. Why can't I see that? What the f*** isn't that showing up?